Now, I told you earlier, I'll be standing for the European Parliament. He announced today that he will lead his new party, the Brexit Party, into those elections. Nigel, I'm not sure how they'll cope in the European Parliament if both of us get back. But let's start. Let's start with how we got here. The only reason that we can stand in the European Parliament elections is because the mother of all rearguard actions has been fought by those who didn't accept the results of the referendum.
No, I mean, it's a complete failure of leadership in our country, and that goes for Theresa May and her government, who never had the courage of doing the job properly. And when she said no deal is better than a bad deal, which, if you think about it, is one of the most obvious statements in human history, she never actually meant it. And a parliament stuffed in both parties full of establishment corporatist Remainers who, as you say, never accepted the result. It is a willful betrayal of the greatest democratic exercise in the history of this country. And I have to say, I've never known in my life, certainly, the gap between the political class and ordinary people to be deeper, wider, and more fundamental than it is right today.
Well, I made these points earlier, and I think they're still underestimated. So speak to them, please. There's a rapid transformation going on. If you look at the polls, as I do assiduously, even in just the last week, there has been a dramatic shift. The most popular choice now in Britain is to leave right now without a deal.
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. I mean, over the last few weeks, we've seen a massive shift, and now every single region in Wales and England, with the exception of London, leaving with no deal immediately commands a huge lead over remaining. I want to say a huge lead. I'm not talking 4 or 5% like the referendum. I'm talking 15, 16% in the Midlands and areas like that. And yes, people, not just leavers, interestingly, a significant number of Remainers are saying we have to leave with no deal. We have to honour the referendum result. We are supposed to be a democratic country, and if we don't carry out the will of the people, we'll never be the same place again. So, yeah, it is a very dramatic shift. And, I've spoken over the last week to several members of Parliament on both sides of the divide, and neither of them were actually aware of what was really going on in the country. I find that astonishing.
Yes, they're in the Westminster bubble. They rarely meet anyone other than those in a deferential relationship to themselves, people at their surgeries and so on. They actually don't feel the pulse of public opinion in the country. I'm now utterly convinced of that. It's been happening for a while. But we now have a political class, a parliament, which smells of the kind of sewage that was leaking in the public gallery this week. I haven't known a time when the British political class was held in lower odour.
No, quite right. In fact, contempt, I think. Total and utter contempt is what is being felt out there in the country. There's one good thing that happened today, and that is this. An extension is far better than accepting Mrs May's new European treaty. It gives us a chance as a country to press the reset button, but it also gives a chance to the one group of people who've been totally ignored for the last 2 or 3 years to say something, and you've all got a chance, listeners, to go out and vote in those European elections. And I genuinely believe there is an opportunity here to deliver the body politic a shock like they've never had before.
Now, the lash-up that is underway, you might say the Corbyn-Theresa May lash-up, we never thought we'd be saying those words. Is that going to come to anything? Will they reach agreement, do you think?
No, I don't. It's pretty clear that Keir Starmer, on behalf of the Labour Party, now wants what they call a confirmatory referendum. And that referendum would be a choice between Mrs May's appalling treaty or staying in the current European treaties. It wouldn't even give Leave voters the chance to express an opinion. And whatever damage Mrs May has done to the Conservative Party and their vote in the country, believe me, she could never, ever agree to that. And I think it's actually, to be honest with you, in Labour's interests now for there not to be any form of deal treaty going through Parliament, and to see the Conservatives suffer at the ballot box. Having said that, I think Labour perhaps underestimate what could happen to their vote, because, you know, the 5 million people who voted Brexit out there, who then voted for Jeremy Corbyn in that 2017 election, and there is this mythology that goes on through the media that somehow Brexit is a right-wing ideology. You know, far from it. Actually, the people like Tony Benn were the great leaders of the Eurosceptic movement for decades in this country. So Labour may be complacent, but I think they could get hurt badly too.
Now, the European Parliament elections, 23rd of May. I think you think, like me, that an 80% chance of them going ahead. Mm-hmm. There are local elections at the beginning. There was a by-election in Newport West just yesterday. There's the potential for a parliamentary by-election in a very strong Remain seat in Peterborough because there's a recall petition going on there. There's lots of opportunities for the public to pass judgment on these politicians.
Yes, there is, but the difference being that you've got a series of local results where many, many other issues will come into play. And when it comes to a European election, there's no doubt about one thing: it'll be about the European question, and it will be a national contest in England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So as far as the Brexit Party is concerned, which I've just taken leadership of, we are going to hold our fire, fight those European elections, and try and deliver a shock.
John is in Thirsk in North Yorkshire. John, welcome.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Perhaps you'll be able to help me. I'm absolutely confused around the whole EU question. Normally, I'm not a confused person. Normally, I have very strong political commitments. But on the EU, I abstained initially because I didn't like the binary vote.
Uh-huh.
Although at the same time, my whole political background pushed me in a Benite leftist position, so I should have voted out. And I knew exactly what people were voting for because we got a bloody leaflet, didn't we?
Yes, it cost you 9 million quid.
Yeah, everyone got a leaflet. So everyone knew exactly what they were voting for. And I'm assuming if everybody could read, they knew what was going down. And so people voted to leave. But at the same time, it was a close vote.
Not that close. 1.4 million was the majority.
But it's a referendum vote, George, you know.
Yeah, but 1.4 million is a lot of people.
Yeah, I accept that. I mean, I'm not disputing that.
Yeah. Just put it this way, John. If it had gone the other way, there would be nobody on the winning side then saying, that was a bit too narrow.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't be saying, how can we renegotiate, anything like that.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean,
they won it during the week with one vote of a majority. And that one vote was a convicted prisoner.
Yeah. I mean, my big problem with the whole EU question is not that I'm not in favour of what you're saying, in that sense, because I think the things I want could only come from a Brexit, and to a degree a hard Brexit. But, a lot of you guys who want to leave, you seem to think we're going to go back to some kind of 19th century trading agreements here, there and everywhere. And those people who want to remain think that they can kind of have the snuggly, cuddly Europe as if nothing's going to impact on Europe. And my big point is the environmental impacts, and we know this is kind of going to come, and the US did a report on this, I think about 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, where huge amounts of the US are not going to be able to produce food. Their ports could possibly be damaged by climate change. The whole of the southern European lateral, which is the Mediterranean, etc., is going to be massively hit by climate change. It's just like as if both sides don't take into account what's going to be coming down the pipe.
No, there's no reason at all for that. If we elected a government I said in my very first broadcast after the referendum in 2016, we should send an email to the European Union. We should tell them that we would at least match every one of their standards, environmental standards, food standards, labour standards, women's rights standards, every standard, we would at least match, if not better, the standards that would be followed in the European Union. Now, of course, there are only a certain kind of government that would make that commitment. Yeah. But if the people in Britain voted for that government making those commitments, as I believe that they would, then we would be a beacon to the world on these matters, not some kind of 19th century throwback.
And let's face it, we brought some of these things in far earlier.
Far earlier than the EU did. Yeah. I've got to press on, John. Thanks as always, because I've got the visiting professor from Boreham Wood, the legend, Lisa. Welcome.
Oh, no, I've never been introduced as that before, George. Thank you very, very much.
I've given you an honorary professorship in the Open University of the Airwaves because you're so eloquent. And because I'm feeling so happy because Mo Salah just scored a goal for Liverpool, putting them 2-1 up. Anyway, go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that's a brilliant result for Liverpool then. Yep. George, yes, that professorship actually would count far more to me than from anywhere else because I really don't rate those other places. They are... well, I don't think all they cracked up to be. Okay, so I'll just crack on with my points.
Go on, Professor.
What's really worrying me is the amount of people you see on social media and on the news talking about not voting or spoiling their vote. I think this is a trap. You don't hear Remainers calling up saying that they're going to be spoiling their vote or not voting.
No, I did deal with that last week, but it's good that you have returned to it.
Yes,
the power in the country would be perfectly delighted if people never bothered to vote again.
I know. You don't see after an election the politician who won come out and lamenting the fact that so many people, so many millions spoiled their vote. People aren't thinking it through. So I know your audience is extremely intelligent and well-informed, but I think it's up to us all to emphasize to people that if we do vote in the EU elections, they are proportional representation, therefore every vote counts, therefore it's a wonderful opportunity for us to make a difference. I just think it's faulty reasoning, and people actually need to go and think it through before they do such a ridiculous
Yes, no, you're absolutely correct. And it may be the shortest parliamentary term in history. And personally, if I'm elected, I hope it is. I hope to be in the European Parliament for the shortest term possible, because my entire programme consists of a demand that the decision of the British people in 2016 be fully honoured.
Yes, and another thing, George, it only comes up on your show, and there are a couple of callers that have mentioned it. And please clarify this for me, because I am stunned that it's never mentioned elsewhere. I believe that because of the various EU laws, and I believe that this would continue under her deal, or if we were in the single market, the things like the state aid law, the 3% spending limit, and the competition laws would prevent Jeremy Corbyn from enacting many of the promises within his manifesto, particularly the promises that were attractive to a large amount of people. Why is this never mentioned in the mainstream media?
Yes, partly because it is untruthfully denied by supporters of the EU. I have close relations with the RMT, the Railway Workers Union, and they're forever actually publishing in black and white on social media the very rules and laws of the EU which would make it impossible for Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell to run the kind of economy that they are pledged to run. For example, on public ownership of railways. It is now extremely difficult and will shortly, under the Lisbon Treaty, be illegal to bring your railways into public ownership, because all goods and services must be offered across the European Union in a competitive tendering process. It's there in black and white, but people don't want to read details and facts, Lisa.
Well, I think it's more than a detail. It's fundamental. And I see a lot of the Blairites, they come on paper reviews, and on one hand, they're telling you, how supportive they are of Corbyn's policies and how wonderful they are, and then they're telling you how much we should be in the EU. And I think, how can you maintain such contradictory opinions at the same time? But just to say on the second referendum, yes, it would be devastating to have to choose between Theresa May's deal and remain. But the debate, I think, in a second referendum, if we had a different choice to that, would be extremely interesting because of all the developments that have taken place. For example, the PESCO and the fast-moving development of the EU army, or Francesca Mogherini acting like an EU foreign minister. Everything that's coming out, we would have so much more ammunition, and I think they would be diminished because we've already seen that their fear campaign was based on smoke and mirrors.
Yes, so I do think, Professor, that the reason why there's been this rapid change in the last week, 2 weeks, is that people have looked more closely into the face of the European Union as we have been involved in this wrangle with them.
Absolutely. I think it's been the most valuable debate that's gone on in our society and across Europe. I think Nigel Farage said on the morning of the 24th, we kicked the first brick out the wall. That indeed we did. We've set something in motion, and we've certainly inspired a lot of the European Eurosceptics, and also we've just inspired debate across Europe. I just wish that a few Remainers would stop being glued to the BBC and following and believing everything they see on there, open their minds and look across the board, across the channel, at what's happening with a more open mind.